Does your business journey have an impact? Stay tuned. Welcome to this week's edition of NoteSchool TV. Well, where every week we bring you an amazing guest and amazing content, and this week is no different. Our guest is very special, and we'll introduce him in just a minute. But before we do so, three things I'd love for you to do for me. Number one, if you have not, hit that like button. Boom, go ahead and hit it. Let us know that you like what we're bringing you each week, and then hit the subscribe button. Right, hit that subscribe button so that you can go back in and see all the past episodes of NoteSchool TV. And by the way, they're amazing. And then number three, hit that bell notification so that you will be aware of when we are about to go live. And that is when? Every Wednesday at 11:05 Central Time. Also, keep your comments coming. Guys, keep them coming in. We love to hear what you have to say. It means an awful lot to Eddie and I to know where you are as far as in your journey and what you think of the topic that we and the guests we brought you in that particular episode. Also, if you want to know more about NoteSchool and what we do at NoteSchool, simply, just go to noteschool.com/TV. Again, noteschool.com/TV. And we would love to have a conversation with you and get you into one of our master classes here very soon. So with that, let's do what we do every week at this time, and let's bring you the news. All right. So in today's news, first thing, mortgage rates for February 27th of 2023, well, they increase. And as you can see here by the chart that I have up, is that 30-year fixed rates are at 7.41. 30-year fixed FHA rates are a little lower at 7.62. The 15-year fixed is at 6.754, and the 10-6 ARM is at 7.51. And that's kind of unusual that the ARM would be higher than the 30-year fixed rate. Here's the thing. This is with a credit score of 700 to 719 with a typical loan amount of about $300,000. And that kind of fits right in with what we're seeing as the median price on a house in the U.S. right now at about $350,000 to $360,000. And that is also with a 20% down payment. In order to get you in at just a tick under 7%, well, you'd need an 800 credit score. So yes, rates are, they are what they are. Interestingly enough, over the past 50 years, the average interest rate has been 7.77%. Just a little fun fact there. So also, something else that I found last night as I was researching and doing this for today, quantitative easing or quantitative tightening by the Fed. So what does that mean? Well, it simply means that as the Fed funds rate goes up, the Fed starts tightening the money supply, right? So they'll start pulling money out by either selling additional treasuries, T-bills, or as these bonds and these T-bonds mature, they just pull that money out of the system. So what that means is just pulling some money out of the system, which in effect tightens up the money supply and tightens lending as well. And finally, a trifecta today, the personal consumption expenditures price index, well, it had started to go down, but it is going up again, both on the price index and the core price index. So it's ticking up as well. And guys, look, you can see inflation target down here at 2%. And finally, inflation up in January just a bit again to 6.4%. So, guys, again, we wouldn't bring you these fun facts if we didn't have a cure for those. So we'll get to we'll get to our guest here. And so I'm going to introduce our guest today. Um, and he's going to talk to us about his journey, right? And the impact that this journey has had over the last, well, let's see, since around 1980. So a long time. What his path has been like and why he has taken this journey that he has taken. So with that, I want to bring on our guest today. He's a very, very good friend of mine, very smart guy, Mr. Eddie Speed.
Good morning, Joe.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
So I'm the guest today.
You're the guest. You are. So that means I'm going to drill you for a little bit.
You know, I'm looking forward to it. We've had a number of people that have asked for this, and so you've put this together, and thank you for it.
Yeah.
And yeah, let's go. I'm ready to talk.
He is rip roaring ready. So Eddie, let's go way back. I mentioned 1980. So let's talk just a minute about the humble beginnings in the note business and how you started.
So Joe, I tell people, I tell the audience, I grew up essentially as a cowboy. I grew up in a cattle auction barn in Mississippi is where I was raised. Mm-hmm. Went out here to Texas Christian University. They had a ranch management program. It was a 1-year deal, but it was like 54 college hours in a deal. I got hurt. I had a horse fall on me and actually broke my back. So I came home to Mississippi. Essentially, I didn't have any money. So I came home and got healed up, and I got a job, and I moved to south of my hometown of Jackson, the capital, and I moved to Hattiesburg. And then I met my now wife of 40 years, Martha. But her dad was a fireman, a real estate investor. He had trailer parks and rental houses and apartments, and he had transitioned. This was in 1980. Mm-hmm. He had transitioned to the note business,
right?
Because notes were becoming really available, and you could buy them at a really good discount. Because, as you well know, interest rates reached at one point. It wasn't a long period of time, but at one point, interest rates literally reached 21%.
So, Eddie, as you got into the business in 1980, mortgage interest rates, folks, were nearly 19%, between 18 and 19%. So that was a Black Swan event as you got in the business.
I entered in a Black Swan event, and right. I started in the business. I would not have made it in the business had it not been for my father-in-law and his partner, who became my mentors. Mm-hmm. Because they guided me. They told me what to go do. I didn't have any real estate background, Joe. Let's laugh about it and say I was clueless. You've heard me say it. I thought a loan was what? Being by myself.
That's right.
Yeah. And so I didn't know anything. I didn't have any background. And they sent me out. And the one thing is, I was a good carrier pigeon. I was willing to go do what they asked me to go do. So they put me out there on the road, calling on people, particularly realtors and home builders.
Right. And
so that journey, you know, Martha and I married 2 years later in 82, moved to Dallas, Fort Worth. And so I essentially served an apprenticeship.
Right.
And then all these years later, Joe, it led us up to kind of where we are. So I'd helped home investors develop their note system.
Yeah.
Right.
Ken D'Angelo, founder of
right. And around 1990. So I had about 10 years of really kind of having some form of training, because I was training real estate investors how to make notes.
Right.
And I did a lot of this, not just for home investors, but a lot of people in the industry. I set up a system, a recipe, make a note to a certain formula, and then we'll buy your note.
So that was a self-fulfilling prophecy that you took took that and just continued to replicate that. And then what home investors really kind of boosted that part of the business, right?
Yeah. So people started calling me around 2000 and saying, would you do some training? And I didn't know how to make money in training. I never sold training. And I trained a lot of people to do the business. So I had some fairly good techniques of explaining how things worked. I trained the home investor franchisees or been involved in that. I trained a lot of other real estate investors. We were buying about 2,000 loans a year all through 1990. So we were deep in the business, but I had an influence in how people created seller financing before they did it.
That's correct.
So I kind of was in the training business, but it wasn't called Note School. It was just, we're just doing business, right?
Yeah. So showing people how to create the best notes so they have the highest value so that when they sell them and, oh, by the way, we'll buy those. Hey, we've got a great note that we can buy and receive payments on for a long time. So Note School started 2000, right?
Yeah, it was kind of by accident. There was a guy that had a class, and he was two guys that had a note class, and one of them got sick. And they said, well, let's just call Eddie and he'll go fill in. And I laugh today thinking about that class, because the way that we're able to train people and demonstrate and show them kind of a journey and stuff of how you build information and go forward. I didn't have any of that stuff.
Right.
So I'm sure that half the class was completely confused. Probably I was confused. but I did it. But anyway, I got a good reaction to the class, and that led me on a journey. And so, yeah, for about, a long time, I did that. And then I met with a couple of people, and they said, well, Eddie, we went to the class and it was 3 days and it was great. But the problem is, Monday morning comes along and we can't quite remember what we said. And then next Monday morning comes along and we've forgotten some stuff. And the next Monday morning comes along and we've really forgotten some stuff. And so that's what led me into essentially developing kind of a coaching, mentoring, model. Yeah.
So got in, kind of started Note School that way in 2000. Then we had a Black Swan event with 9/11. Horrible. That was tough on the industry, right? The banking industry. And then, of course, that led us into what we've learned to call a crash in slow motion with the mortgage meltdown in 2007, 2008. And talk a little bit about that. And then we want to bring this forward to where we are now and what that, yeah.
So from about 2000 to 2008, I only taught people about buying performing notes or seller financing property and creating notes. Right. Now, I had been deeply involved in buying non-performing notes back after 1986. So it's not like I hadn't been in the business. I'd been deeply in the business of buying defaulted loans. I just didn't teach it because honestly, the market in 2005 through 2008, very similar to the last 3 years that we saw. People were running with money in both hands. You can't make a mistake in real estate. There was a FOMO, fear of missing out. I'm like, it was that. Right. And that's why if somebody would have talked to me in the last 3 years, I was carrying a caution flag. Yeah. Because this isn't the first time I've seen this, right? And so fast forward, we started teaching buying defaulted loans by 2010 to 2000, probably 15. 80% of people that came to Note School, Joe, in that era were coming there to learn about buying defaulted loans. Right. Now, we taught them the other side. Right. Once they got in the school, but they didn't even know about it. They didn't know about a partial and building retirement accounts and stuff. Right. So the doorway became very different in different markets. And so, that's kind of where we are. And so a few years ago, I figured out that real estate investors really, honestly, we really could help them a lot in doing creative financing and how to structure a deal if the seller was going to owner finance it and how to position it where they were willing to do it. Right. A lot of people say, oh, yeah, I do creative financing. Well, Joe, in all fairness, that's a little bit like asking a kid in junior high, do you play football? Right. Well, he does play football. He's not lying. He plays football. Right. But that's like going to the NFL and asking Tom Brady, do you play football? They both say yes. They just play at a different level. Right. And so we kind of figured out maybe we could help real estate investors do this at a more accelerated basis. And we think we've done really good at that. And you ain't going to believe this, Joe, but everybody's back wanting to learn about notes again. Well, yeah, that is amazing. So
our phone, our NoteSchool, right, training phone, your phone has been ringing endlessly. I mean, we talk 2 or 3 times a day sometimes, and you won't believe who I just got off the phone with. You won't believe who I just got off the phone with. And they're kind of just saying, hey, how do we navigate this whole this thing that we're going through now, right? So it starts in, we have a pandemic in 2020, and then we have low interest rates, and then we have, inflation, and then interest rates are going up. So prices are kind of going down. So people are very confused. And this is when we have learned to excel in this business. So let's talk about that and what that means.
So if you ask, anybody that is involved in, as a team member of NoteSchool, they would say essentially NoteSchool has 3 towers. It has 3 things that we train. First of all, we train real estate investors how to buy and sell on creative terms.
Correct.
Right? Why would you do that? Because creative terms is an effective way to lower the interest rate you're having to pay on financing.
Right.
If the market says you're paying 7% and we can teach you how to do it at 2.5%, that gives you a really unique advantage.
Gives you a gap.
Right? Because you're now buying at yesterday's interest rates in today's market.
Right.
Right. And so we do that really well. And so we have a group that are real estate investors, and they could be anything from the hotshot ninjas all the way to a guy that does a few deals a year. Right. And I had a guy call me this morning. He's got a $5 million portfolio of rentals. And he says, Eddie, I've been contemplating this. I'm in a mastermind with him. He knows me well. And he says, I've been contemplating this for a year. And every instinct inside me says, I want to roll this portfolio over and be the bank and not a landlord. And then, so we had a great conversation about, so I get those phone calls pretty often.
Yeah.
And I would say like literally more than once a week. And that's a guy that has a pretty significant play in the business. But as I explained to him, I get a guy with 3 rental properties that says that to us. So you don't have to have $5 million worth to have that same issue, right?
So why would a guy because rental properties, well, Eddie, they were on fire, right? And so why would a guy, say, well, I think it's time for me to pivot and maybe look at something a little bit differently? I mean, what makes a guy do that?
I think the real estate economy is bothering him. And I think the grind is really bothering him. I told him this morning, I said, you want to know who NoteSchool's #1 avatar is? And, he says, who? And I said, we're a home for burnout landlords.
Right.
That's what we are.
Exactly.
And I said, the thing is people do notes for 10 years and then they want to do more. People do rentals for 10 years and then they're like, they can't stand it. Right. And that's not everybody. I'm not saying everybody has struggles with rentals. I'm not saying that. Right. And I'll tell you, Joe, that we've just come through an incredible market to own rentals because of the lift in value, right? But the question is does that hockey stick keep going up? Right. Or does it start pointing in a different direction? And that's what's bothering me. And I don't have a crystal ball. I can tell you that you and I scrape a lot of data. We are generally in for a real estate decline this year. That is not a giant surprise, I don't think. But he's just looking at it more of this is a chance to change his lifestyle. So that's one customer. Right. That's a guy that and so what do we teach? Well, we teach you how to sell or finance property when you sell. Then you have a note. And what we then teach you are financial modeling techniques once you own a note. That could be selling your rental or buying a seller finance note from somebody else, or it could be a reperforming loan. Right. And you're saying, what do you mean financial modeling? Well, Joe, what if I could say to you with 1,000% integrity, I can show you how to invest $1,000 and turn it into $100,000 in future income that you never pay taxes on. Yes. And is that legit?
That is 100% legit. We see it every day.
So people show up at NoteSchool and they say, this partial thing, I think I need to know this. Yeah. Right. And so we've done more partials than anybody in the country. I think we've studied it longer and deeper. And so I think we played at NFL level at financial modeling relative to performing notes.
Yes.
Right. And the last thing, Joe, is that we teach is teaching people how to buy loans that aren't paying, non-performing loans.
Right.
And we don't always teach that, Joe. We haven't taught that in years until about last summer. We really kicked it up.
Yep.
Right. Why?
Well, we used to have a 3-day class that we taught nothing but non-performing loans. We taught performing loans, but yeah.
The reason is because we don't teach something that won't work.
Right.
And if I would have been teaching you to buy non-performing notes during the pandemic when they had all these foreclosure moratoriums, to me that would have been dishonest.
Mm-hmm.
Because they weren't selling a lot of non-performing notes back then, and you couldn't foreclose.
Yes.
So now all of a sudden we got this gigantic pinup inventory. We just had Darren Bloomquist on just a couple of weeks ago. And if you watch that, you can't be confused. There is a wave of foreclosures that are coming. There's about just under 2 million loans that aren't paying.
Right.
And there's this pinup inventory because we went a couple of years, Joe, where you couldn't foreclose.
Yep.
And so these people didn't run in there and make their payments and bring their loan current. They were delinquent and they remained delinquent. And now those loans are kind of, let's call it, coming down the path.
Right.
And that they've arrived at our doorstep. Joe, we will buy more non-performing notes this quarter than we bought all of last year.
Right. You know, Eddie, and we talk about the forbearance process. And of course, those numbers, well, everybody's exited forbearance. Well, they exited forbearance because they had to, right? Their program ran out. Didn't mean they could pay again.
Yeah, I mean, we've been watching this. You know, let's talk about interest rates for a minute.
Yeah, let's do.
I was in a pretty high level meeting the other day. I'm kind of a mastermind of like super players, right? And a guy said something to me that kind of shocked me. I didn't respond. I didn't say anything. I didn't roll my eyes. But he said, we got caught by the interest rate change. And I'm thinking, what? We saw inflation kicking up in the last quarter of 2021, and we were having internal meetings saying, guys, rates are going to rise because that's how they're going to deal with inflation. And when rates rise, it's going to drastically affect the real estate market.
Right.
We could see that train coming down the track way before it arrived at the station. And so I'm saying sometimes gray hair does matter a little bit.
It does.
You know, sometimes people that are constantly reading the market conditions, sometimes they know the storm is coming. To us, which like we've been listening to the weatherman, he's been saying there's a hurricane coming, you know, to Florida.
Yeah.
You know, a week before it shows up. And some people are out there on the beach going, it looks like there's a storm coming on top of me. You know, I mean, it's kind of that.
What happened?
Yeah. And so the thing that the market has done is not a surprising thing. Joe, interest rates are what have tumbled the market over.
Right.
We had a huge increase in property value and low rates.
That's right.
Now all of a sudden we've had a huge increase in property values and a huge increase in rates. And now we have reached this point of properties are not affordable.
Right.
And so this is why people need alternative to financing, so that some or all the financing of the property is below the rates that the mortgage companies are giving.
Right. Yeah, it's a big deal. And affordability is, you know, you see everywhere, you know, people just can't afford. I want to go back to something that we were talking about a minute ago. We were talking about the 3 legs of training, right? That we do. I want to go back to this creative financing piece, buying and selling on terms, and specifically that target, that avatar being that burnout landlord. There's several things that we can do to help that burnout landlord ease out of that. And one of the biggest ones is the tax consequences or tax savings for a landlord that's owned a property a while. Talk about that for a minute.
Well, and by the way, this doesn't relate just to residential houses.
Right.
This is commercial, it's multifamily, it's land, anybody that has a property for investment purposes.
Mm-hmm.
We have stumbled into a couple of tax hacks,
Mhm.
right? You're saying, well, how come my accountant doesn't do this? First of all, you got to remember, between Joe and I, we have 75 years experience in this business, right? That's why our hair's gray, Joe. I'm just saying, I'm making sure you're clear about that. So we're pretty much a mile deep in this, and we've stumbled into one kind of anomaly that we figured out after another. Now, we've verified it with attorneys and accountants, so it's not like we're just make some big discovery and run off down the road. We vet what our things that we've discovered. Right. One thing we discovered is that when you opt to seller finance, IRS, then lets you take your gain the year you get the money, not the year you sell it. That's called installment sales.
Right.
And that means that you don't have this big lump sum of money coming in at one time. And on capital gains, interestingly, you don't start paying tax till you earn a certain amount of capital gains income. Right. Over that, you pay tax.
Right.
But the first so much money is free, and that's about $40,000 for a single filer and about $80,000 for a joint filer, right? And so if you lay this income down and take this capital gain over a long period of time, just because of this is the way the tax law is written, it's no trickery, but it is something that we figured out that you very likely may not pay capital gains tax.
Right.
Right. The other thing that we have become really good at are partials, buying a stream of payments on a note. When you buy that stream of payments of a note, it becomes an asset sale, which is different than collecting interest on payments you're collecting.
Correct.
It changes how it's taxed. It's not, there's nothing wrong about it. We didn't change the tax law. We've just found some strategies within the tax law that guide the path of how you might do a deal, right? And so there's a lot of things like that over many years and a lot of transactions that all of a sudden you just figure things out.
Yes. And, that's the path that we're going down right now. And isn't it funny how once you start discovering things, and we've started learning this, it just has got like light speed, like ninja speed going through this, is the other strategies that we see for not only, the tax situation and capital gains and recapture and all of that. It's just like coming in now, and we're like, oh my God, we've trained for this for a little bit, right?
Well, I'll use the telecommunications industry as an example. The first flip phone or mobile phone, the sack phone. Did you ever have one of those, Joe? Yeah, I did. I had one too.
Yeah.
The sack phone, it now has morphed to the iPhone,
right,
and the iPad, right. So understand that once they figured out this, then they figured out more, and then they figured out more. And that's the way our journey has been. The first discovery wasn't the best discovery.
Right.
But without the first discovery, we would have never gotten to the 12th discovery.
That's right.
Right. So all we're just saying, in a mature business where you've been thinking about something a long time, we do some exercises here in our office. I love this, Joe. You've seen us do this. And that is thinking exercises. Yeah. And the answer is, and we have a guy in our office that runs our marketing that's really gotten this perfected, and he guides our staff through doing it's really good, really cool stuff.
Yeah.
We teach this in NoteSchool too, to our members. But the thing is, Joe, what it really does is it says that usually the first answer is not the right answer.
Right.
It's the answer that's on the surface. It's not the deep answer that makes the difference. And I think that's what's true in our training. It's the surface answer is not the best answer. It is an answer, but there's a deeper answer inside that has a much more meaningful result.
Right. Impactful. Yeah. Yeah. So Eddie, as we kind of start wrapping this up, thoughts on kind of the way that things are moving, through the year, and and some thoughts as to what's going on, what we're going to see.
Well, right now, NoteSchool is breaking some records, a 20-year company, and we're breaking records in people that we're putting into a class.
Yeah.
And our phone is ringing with a lot of people, hey, I've got, I have a group and I have this audience and they need creative financing, or I have this group and they're wanting to buy notes now. I think I'm not exaggerating, I think I have 17 speaking gigs in the next 45 days. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't include our NoteSchool audience. That's not you and I doing a class or a deal lab to our existing members. These are people that don't really even know us yet, right? Or they're learning more about what's possible. And so we're grateful for that. We've lived in kind of boom times before, but I think we really saw this coming literally in the fall of 2021. And our team has been very disciplined to our scale and our structure to know this was going to happen. And so I think we're way better prepared for it than we've ever been. Right. We don't feel like we're running around the office with our hair on fire. Our team is very seasoned. When somebody comes to a 3-day class, the rookie has been with us 5 years.
Right.
And Joe, you've been with us a dozen, and Ben's been with us 15 or 16 years. Yeah. Matt's been with us 10 or 11 years. It's that.
Yeah.
And so the cool thing about that for us is, when somebody comes in, we really can we can put our arms around them. We can give them legitimate guidance based on experience, not based on it feels like this. Sometimes when you think something a certain way, that doesn't necessarily mean that's going to be the result. The only way you can deal with people with results is they got to have experience. Mm-hmm. You can't replace that.
That's it.
There's theory and there's experience.
That's right.
Right. Now experience should lead to theory, but a lot of times people will go with theory when they don't have any track record of proving that actually is how it works or doesn't work. So I think that it matters to us. Our NoteSchool team, not just you and I, Joe, our NoteSchool team, period, leads with a heart of a go-giver.
Yes.
They lead with a heart of, we want you to get this. We want you to get value. We want you to be successful. And I think as long as we do that, we're gonna see this kind of boom time, and we feel like we're really prepared to take kind of a little small army in this direction. Mm-hmm. And I think it's going to be good to them. You've heard me make this saying. I've been involved a lot in the land business too.
Yeah.
And I did a lot of land business with a guy down in far South Texas, kind of a country fellow, but he's super smart.
Yes.
And he used to make a saying to me, and it's always welded into my brain. You've heard me say it many times. He says, Eddie, if you'll do X, whatever that was, it'll be good to you a long time in the future.
Right.
And I think if you will look at notes in one of those 3 towers, or 2, or possibly even all 3, mm-hmm. Joe, I believe it will be good to you a long time in the future. Yes. I believe that.
And guys, one of the things that you may or may not know about Eddie is that not only are we, the here and now as to what's going on, but I can tell you that Eddie is, for NoteSchool and Colonial as our group of companies, he's always looking out there over the horizon to see, okay, what is the next? And you've been amazing at that, Eddie, as far as all of these different milestones that we've been through, to look out there and have the vision to say, this is what we're looking at next. And so I'm excited as we move forward, and I'm excited to have, some of these guys that are here with us become part of the NoteSchool, the ecosystem, the family, and we'll keep pushing this thing forward. Final thoughts?
Yeah, I think we as long as our team continues to lead with a heart for the student and leads for a heart for success, and we clearly have the experience. Yes. We clearly, I feel like you talk about vision. God just gave me that, Joe. I'd be a fool if I try to take credit for it. Yes. It's just a gift God entrusted me with. right? And I love it. So I have a passion for it. Yeah. And it has helped us a lot. And our team like is a village like any other team. And that's a skill that God gave me. And like he gave you some skills, and Max and Susan and Bob, like all of us combined as a village have quite a bit of skills. Right. And so I appreciate that. And I do feel like that skill set is what allows us to guide people with clarity into how to react and how to find the opportunity in various markets. And this market for a lot of real estate investors seems challenging. Yeah. It may seem challenging, but believe me, there's giant opportunity in it. I think that's my close.
Well, very good. And, there you have it, folks. We have positioned ourselves so that we can give you some leadership into where to go with this and what this is going to happen. So, Eddie, thank you so much for being with us today and for sharing that with us. The impact that you've made on the note industry and the real estate industry has been tremendous. It's getting even more as we move forward in what's going on now. And we just look forward to, moving forward. We look forward to having you guys come in and check us out as well. And again, if you want to know more about what we do at NoteSchool, just simply go to noteschool.com/TV. And we would love to have a conversation with you about what your next moves could be. We'd love to have you in one of our master classes. And with that, Eddie, I think we will bid these guys a fond farewell. We will see you all next week. Same place, same time. Have a great week. Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.